Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Wellness Foreplay. We are Dr. Dondi and Marcy Nettles.
Hi, guys.
We are your presenters, your hosts, your educators today, because every episode of Wellness Foreplay, we find a certain topic, and then we ask 4 questions about it, strictly designed not to tell you how to prevent, treat, cure, or mitigate any disease, but to educate you and inform you, ideally to do your own research to make you a more valuable healthcare consumer for your family and for yourself. So welcome to the Wellness Foreplay podcast.
Woohoo! So I am a former police detective and
I'm a former family wellness chiropractor.
And so we've brought our backgrounds and our expertise together to do the investigations, to come up with the information and the knowledge that can be your launching pad or the foreplay to your wellness. So we hope that you are in the mood to get this information today, because we're excited, because this episode number 27, is about Nutrigenomics, something you may have never even heard of before, but it is an amazing science that you need to know about. So the last 2 episodes, we focused on genetics, what makes up who you are. And then we also talked about epigenetics and how you can positively influence your genetics by focusing on epigenetics. And now today we're going to take it into another step of empowerment for you on how the food you choose can positively affect your DNA. Okay. So like Dondi said, we always answer 4 questions about our topic. And the 4 questions today are: 1, what is nutrigenomics? 2, how can nutrigenomics benefit you? 3, when choosing my food, what should I be aware of? And 4, what are examples of using nutrigenomics? All right, guys, I am super excited about this episode because you're going to feel so empowered afterward. So let's go ahead and let's get started with question number 1, which is, what is nutrigenomics? Nutrigenomics. So what is it?
Nutrigenomics is, or nutrition and genomics, which is how the root of that word is brought about. It's the cutting edge science that shows how to create the best path for your health using plants and plant compounds to optimize the performance of your DNA, or in this case, your genome, which is where nutrigenomics comes from.
Yeah. So have you ever eaten something and you've just felt amazing?
Yes.
Yeah. Or have you ever eaten something that's just made you feel like crap?
Yes.
It's all in the way your food is communicating with your DNA or with your genes. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into a little bit further here in how can nutrigenomics benefit you. So guys, this really is an empowerment question. This is one where we're going to give you a launching pad to be able to go out and do some investigating on your own, because you're the one that knows your body best.
Right.
You know what challenges you have. You know what food makes you feel great. And that's what this is all about. Because what you need to know is that utilizing nutrigenomics, it's going to give you the opportunity to have the education so that you can look beyond the sound, the noise, all of the stuff that's being thrown in your faces about diets and food fads, and all that advertising that's going on all over the place. So we want you to be able to take some ownership and feel empowered to go out and do some research around food, what it can do positively for your body and for your genetics. So nutrigenomics can give you a simplified roadmap. If you look into it and you're really curious on how you can have specific foods positively affect the way your body reacts, the way your body is influenced, the way your genetics actually plays out. Because remember, in the genetics episode, we told you, you may be born a certain way, but then you can influence the way your body or your genes express themselves. Okay? So you can take the power. You have the power, guys. You absolutely have the power in your hands. Understanding epigenetics that we talked about last episode, and now today with nutrigenomics, these are both 2 ways that you can positively affect your genetics or your DNA. Okay, so that's how nutrigenomics can benefit you. All right.
Good stuff.
Question number 3 is exciting because this one is going to be, again, we had an episode a little while back where we said that we were going to tip over some sacred cows. Well, we're going to be talking about some things that some of you may not quite understand, and it might be a little bit uncomfortable again in question number 3. And question number 3 is, when choosing my food, what should I be aware of? And there's some big stuff here. It's like, and we're going to start off, we're just going to come out of the gate just like, boom. And we're going to talk about GMOs. What would you like to share about GMOs?
Oh my gosh, where do we start? GMOs are genetically modified organisms. It's when things that don't normally happen in nature and actually can't happen in nature oftentimes are forced in a laboratory. And so some examples of that. So Virginia Tech University wanted to do some studies and look at what could possibly allow lettuce to be more nutritionally dense with vitamin C. Because lettuce, and then we're talking about iceberg lettuce here, it's almost nutritionally void. It's mostly water, not so much healthy stuff. So they took some rat DNA and spliced it into the lettuce because they found that rats actually produce their own vitamin C, which they actually do.
But it's still rats. That's
but
disgusting.
It's still a rat. And so they take rat DNA, splice it into lettuce DNA, and lo and behold, the lettuce has a 700% increase in vitamin C. Now, you might be thinking just from the vitamin C component, 700% more vitamin C in lettuce might not be all that bad, unless you realize and until you found out how it happened. So I don't know about you. I've seen a lot of episodes of Animal Planet, and I've seen lots of episodes of Discovery Channel, and I've seen lots of scientific shows, and I've never seen a rat making love to a head of lettuce.
No.
And even if it did, nothing would happen.
Oh, that's so gross.
But in a laboratory, you can make things happen. You can force things to happen, and I'll talk a little bit more about
things that shouldn't happen.
Things that should not happen. Things that can't happen in nature. A rat cannot give its DNA to lettuce to make lettuce 700% more effective in producing vitamin C without a scientist and a laboratory involvement. So if it takes laboratories and science, if it's impossible to happen in nature, but now it's something you can put on in your salad and eat, I'm just not saying it's right or wrong, just asking you to think, could there be some side effects or some potential risks on eating something that is completely genetically modified and could never happen in nature?
And
there's other sources of vitamin C.
Yeah. And I want to know, are they advertising it as, rat impregnated lettuce? I don't know.
No,
are they letting
us
know what's in this? No, because there's actually no truth in advertising. So the foods that you're eating, that you're buying, that is GMO, you really do not know what is going on inside of your food, which means you don't know what you're putting in your mouth.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. What else do you have for us?
Another example of somebody was just looking at a tomato, a sliced tomato, making a sandwich, probably some researcher, some scientist somewhere, and thought, how cool would it be if my tomato slice was actually the same dimensions as my bread? In other words, square. So they decided, let's make some square tomatoes. And so they got some shrimp genes and split shrimp,
As in shrimp
like
cocktail?
all you can eat shrimp or shrimp cocktails, and spliced it into tomatoes. And lo and behold, we now have a square tomato that looks nice on a piece of bread. But kind of looking at the rat and the lettuce example, I've never seen a shrimp and a tomato have sexy time.
No.
I've never seen it. I've never even seen it in anime or a meme. And so if you can't even think of something so silly except put it into work in a laboratory so that you have a square tomato so that it looks good on a piece of bread while you're making a sandwich, think about the intention. I don't even really know what to say other than avoid it. Danger, Will Robinson, if you remember Lost in Space, the TV show. Now, that's just one example of tomatoes. There was others where Monsanto, the company Monsanto, wanted to give tomatoes the ability to last through a frost. And so they took some Arctic fish, which are cold water fish, and they spliced their genes into the tomatoes, and they did it with strawberries too. So again, fish cannot impregnate a strawberry or vice versa, and fish cannot impregnate a tomato or vice versa. It has to be forced or manipulated in a laboratory, and I'll give you how they do that. But it's something that could never, ever, ever, ever exist in nature, but it exists in our produce department.
You know what, though? Being a vegetarian, that kind of ticks me off.
Right.
I mean, it's like they're not putting on the advertising that there's like fish in this tomato.
Mm-mm.
It's like, that just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. Again, no truth in advertising. You've got to be aware of what you're putting in your body. If it says GMO, more than likely you want to say, no, you don't want it. Okay.
How about some silly ones?
Okay, go ahead.
So did you know that jellyfish and certain types of very deep water fish and even bacteria and even fireflies, they produce something called bioluminescence. They can, through chemical means, create light.
They glow.
They glow. So some people were wondering, what would it be like to have goats' noses and pigs' noses glow at night? So they started taking jellyfish DNA and splicing it with goat and pig DNA so their noses glow at night. And then they want you to eat those animals. Who?
Toxic,
I'm not making this stuff up, but who sits around? Maybe I can see it around a campfire where they're drinking some kind of fermented beverage and thinking, I wonder what it would be like to make that pig's nose glow at night. Let's go get some jellyfish, and let's put it together and see what happens. And I'm not.
When you say put it together,
it can't happen together. It can only be forced in a laboratory, and I can't wait to tell you how they do it. But that's just some of the absurdities that happen. And I've got some more examples. So potatoes, they took some jellyfish DNA and mixed them with potatoes so that when potatoes need water, they glow in the dark. It's kind of like a do-it-yourself. How do you know when to water a potato? Well, if it's glowing, it needs water.
It's a clue.
But in order to make that happen, you have to have maybe that's where food porn comes from.
Hey.
Food porn. Let's have some jellyfish and some potatoes just go at it. And so when those potatoes need water, they glow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have a jellyfish and a potato
So
orgy.
are you going to tell us how they do this? Were you going to do that, or are we going to save that for another episode? Or
should I talk about more of the things that they're doing?
Couple more, just a couple more.
I'll give you some Dow Chemical is engineering corn, is mixing corn with human genes. Don't know why they're doing it, but they are. Hawaii Agriculture Research Center is actually taking sugarcane and they're infusing it with human DNA. Don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but they're doing it.
That's just weird.
Rice engineered with human genes at a company called Applied Phytologics. I don't know what they're trying to do with rice, mixing it with human genes, but how about Stanford University? They're engineering corn. They're taking corn and mixing it with jellyfish genes, maybe glow-in-the-dark corn. I don't know, but that's what Stanford University is doing. Corn, this one really, really freaks me out. Corn engineered with the hepatitis virus. Hepatitis is a liver problem virus. They're infusing hepatitis virus into corn at a company called Protogene. Who knows what they're trying to do with that, but that's crazy. So here's the question. How do scientists and researchers interbreed these species that could never happen in nature? Well, first of all, God created every living thing with its own barrier system to its DNA. Okay. So whether you believe in God or not, if you don't, let's just say nature, because you can't argue with this. Nature gave living organisms barriers to protect themselves against the introduction of DNA from a different species. Okay. That's why you can have a pig have sex with another pig and you're going to get little piglets, but you can't have a pig have sex with a horse and get anything. No. Because there's these barriers to the DNA that do not allow cross-pollination, if you will, of DNA. But here's how they make it happen. They use viruses or bacteria to infect the animal or plant cell with the new DNA. Or they coat the DNA with metal pellets and then fire it with a special gun into the cells. Or they inject new DNA into fertilized eggs with a very, very, very tiny needle. Or they use electric shock to create holes in the membranes of cells, and then they inject the DNA into the holes created from the electric shock. So they're forcing nature. Some people are calling it interspecies rape. Think of it that way. That is how vulgar it truly is. That's what genetically modified organisms, how they're created, because they could never happen in nature. They can only happen in a laboratory. So if something cannot happen in nature, it can only happen in a laboratory by manipulating the DNA. You might want to be a little concerned or aware before you put it in your pie hole, because your body makes you out of the food you give it. So if you're taking in genetically modified food and your body's making cells with it, you're genetically modifying yourself every time you eat something like that. So just be aware, be a more aware consumer in these situations. But that's the only way they can make these things happen, is manipulate it in a laboratory under very aggressive techniques.
Okay, guys.
For profit, for patents.
Okay, so GMO. Gotta say
good.
no, right? So
Just
how
say
do you
no.
know? How do you know if you're buying produce or something in the store? How do you know if it's GMO? Well, I was just looking it up, and it's actually based off of the 5 digits. There's a PLU code that's assigned to every product inside of a store, right? So this is your tip. This is something you need to write down, okay? So if the first digit is 0, it is conventionally grown produce, okay? So grown the way it would normally be grown without extra precautions, okay? Now, if the first digit is 9, it is organically grown. And that's what you really want to be looking for.
Look for the 9s.
Now, if the first digit is 8, it shouldn't be 8. Like literally
right.
eaten, right? If the first digit is 8, it is genetically modified. So you want to stay away from all of those PLUs, those codes that are on the products that you're buying in the store to eat. If it starts with an 8, don't put it in your cart. Okay, don't buy those, because GMO is not ever going to be a good thing that should be in your body. So that's one of the things that when you're choosing your food, you need to be aware of, and that's GMOs. Then you also need to be aware of if it's organic. I just told you, organic. Look for the 9 numbers. Look for those PLUs that start with 9, because that means it's organic. That means that you don't have to worry about pesticides that have been sprayed all over your food, or water that has bad stuff in it being used to water the plants that are growing your
growth
food.
accelerators.
Yes, any of that. And wouldn't a growth accelerator kind of be a GMO? Wouldn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily changing the DNA of the food,
just the growth cycle.
Yeah, just shortening the growth cycle. So you definitely don't want any of that kind of stuff. Now, you also need to pay attention if you do eat chicken, beef, pork, any of that kind of stuff. How are these animals being raised? Are they being raised
humanely,
right? Caged? Or are they pasture raised, right? Are they being taken care of in a way that they are healthy themselves, so they're providing healthy food for you? And then there's the farm raised and the wild caught when it comes to fish. And I know you're pretty passionate about this. Yeah,
any kind of seafood, shellfish.
Any of it. But what's the reason behind that? Why do you want to make sure that you're always asking, is that wild caught? And is a wild caught like out in the ocean away from farms?
Line caught, wild caught. Think of it this way. I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Salmon. Go into a fish place where you've got obviously fresh fish available to you, and look at the farm raised salmon and take a photograph of it with your cell phone. Read it close. It'll say farm raised, and most of the time it will also say color enhanced, meaning they colored the flesh to be orange or pink because it didn't come that way. Now take that, or even better yet, pick up that piece of fish, that fillet of salmon, farm-raised, color-added fillet of salmon, carry it with you and go find line-caught or wild-caught salmon and place the 2 fillets side by side. You'll see a clear difference. The wild caught or line caught that is not color enhanced is usually 4 or 5 shades darker in pink or orange, depending upon what you're looking at, whether it's, and this is also the case with steelhead and trout. It's so different. Well, the difference is, what did that fish eat before it was cut open and filleted so that you could eat it? That's really the thing with farm raised anything, is it's being fed food it would never eat in the wild most of the time, or it's being fed in a way that it is not a predator. It is being given food. It's like it's the difference between an animal in the wild and an animal in the zoo. The stress that the animal undergoes, the types of food it eats, when it eats, how it eats. Does it have to hunt for its food if it's a predator? All of these things go into what the life of that fish or chicken or pig or cow or who you name it is going to go through. Because if it's living in a controlled environment, it's under stress and it's eating things it normally shouldn't eat. So the flesh that it creates, that you consume, you are now eating something that was not the way it was supposed to be in nature. Take your chances. It's cheaper. Yes. It might be more readily available. Yes. But what is best for your body? That is the key. The more natural that thing, if you are eating animal protein, that animal that provided that protein, the more its life was the way it was supposed to be raised and it's eating the foods that it was created to eat. It's living the way it was created to live, not in a cage or not in a controlled environment, on a pasture. It's going to be better for your own consumption, because just the humane life of that animal was much more peaceful to it than it was otherwise when everything is controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, guys, we would highly recommend that you really do look at increasing your fresh fruits and vegetables and minimizing your animal protein, just because it's harder on your body to digest. There's all kinds of different things that can be happening. But for a nutrigenomic standpoint, you really want to be looking at the cleanest source of foods that you can be getting for your body. And then you also need to take into consideration, what is it worth you taking the time to eat your home cooked food?
Yeah.
In comparison to fast food or food that is preserved. For one thing, the knowledge of what's actually in your food. Because sometimes, like I've been saying over and over and over again, guys, truth in advertising, there is none.
Right.
Okay. And so when you're purchasing, especially if you're going to a fast food restaurant and you're doing it for the convenience, I understand, guys, we can get so freaking busy, right? We can get so busy that we don't have the time to be fixing a meal every single day, 3 times a day. And you've got kids, it can be even more than that, right? But you've really got to be
deliberate.
Willing and deliberate in your food choices and what you're putting into your body. And so sometimes it takes extra planning, a little bit of extra time, and definitely you being more committed to doing the research to find out what is best for you. You know your body best. You know what your body's struggling with, or what your body thrives on. You want to go and you want to research those areas and find out, okay, so what is it that could be causing that problem inside my body, or what is it that my body's really, really, jiving with and loving? It's like my jam, but not necessarily jam, because there's a lot of sugar in jam. But okay, let's move on to question number 4. Are you ready for question number 4? Okay, here we go. Question number 4 is, what are examples of using nutrigenomics? I love this question. And again, you have the opportunity and you have so much information at your fingertips. I mean, think about it. Think about encyclopedias and think about where our parents and grandparents used to have to go to get information, right? To the library. If they were lucky, they had their own set of Encyclopedia Britannicas, right?
Didn't have to replace it every year.
Every year, being updated every stinking year. But guess what we have? We have massive computers at our fingertips. You want to just make sure that you are going and doing your investigations and you're searching, making sure that you're not getting the information from websites that actually are being paid and bought for by somebody that's producing something, but you want to make sure that you're going out and doing the research for yourself.
Yeah. Being your best healthcare advocate.
So we're going to give you some examples of nutrigenomics and what it can do for you. And we're going to start off with a problem that's very common to everyone. And that's inflammation. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Now, inflammation, we've actually had an episode on inflammation as well a ways back. So go and find that in our library of our episodes on inflammation. And we actually talk about how some inflammation can actually be good. if it's in an acute situation, like you just got injured and you need that inflammation around a spot where you just hurt it to help protect it from being damaged any further or to stop further damage, right? So that type of inflammation is not what we're talking about. We're talking about chronic inflammation. We're talking about inflammation that's causing all kinds of different issues and problems inside of your body. It can be leading to a lot of pain, right?
And dysfunction in your body. Dis-ease.
Yes. So we chose inflammation because there's actually foods that can help to tame it, or there's foods that can inflame it, right? And so we're going to talk about some of the foods that can tame it, because if you go back to our inflammation episode, we actually list quite a few foods that can be an inflammatory food. So go check that out. There's also some additional suggestions on anti-inflammatory foods. But
these foods make your house smell really nice when you cook them.
I love that. I love it. So the foods that turn off the inflammatory gene are onions, garlic, leeks, even elderberries, capers, turmeric, and radishes. So that's just a grabbing of just 7, 8, 9 different foods that you can be adding into your regular grazing process to help reduce inflammation. And that is nutrigenomics at its finest, right? It's using foods or plant compounds to directly, positively impact your DNA. Okay?
And raw is better.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, that brought back a lot of memories on raw garlic.
Though I do prefer cooked onions over raw onions, unless it's in a salad.
Oh my gosh, guys. You know what? So this just brought back a memory.
Like
this brought back a memory to me. And so I hated it. It was so bad. But my dad used to love raw onion sandwiches. So it'd be 2 pieces of bread, mayonnaise, and an onion. And that was the sandwich. And we actually had that for lunch sometimes.
Wow.
When dad was in charge, right?
I never heard of that. Although a Maui sweet onion, that would probably be.
That might be okay, but that's not what I got.
No.
That wasn't good.
Red onions or white onions or yellow onions?
Without knowing it, he was putting nutrigenomics into action. Right?
Yeah, you weren't as inflamed.
Oh my gosh. That just totally. And then my mom, she was like always before her time. When we would get sick, she would actually have us suck on raw garlic.
Yeah.
It would help with sore throats and with inflammation throughout sinuses and all kinds of different things. It was such a great, natural way of affecting problems in our body.
A clove of garlic a day would be awesome. It's kind of offensive with your breath and your body odor.
Yeah, it can be. But yeah, I don't want to do that every day. Yeah,
Cook
absolutely. So, and then of course, there's also those natural compounds that we've talked about previously. Natural compounds that actually activate pathways inside your body, like the NRF2, NRF1, and the NAD pathways. These all positively, when they're activated by these natural compounds, they help to reduce the damage inside of your cells called oxidative stress. It helps to increase your mitochondrial production, which is responsible for your cellular energy. And it also helps to increase sirtuin activity, which this is just good all the way around for communication, for cleaning out the mess that it's like degunking your cells so that they can continue working at their most optimal level. So those 3, and again, we've done episodes on each one of those. You can go back to our episodes. It's all underneath the theories of aging. So episodes 16, 17, and 18, we challenge you, if you have not listened to those, go back, listen to those. And if you listened, but you didn't quite get what we're talking about right now, go and listen again, because it's going to make a whole new, it's going to be that much more.
Repetition is the mother of all skill.
Yeah. So you are what you eat.
That is true.
You really are.
Literally.
Yeah. So put some thought and some research into it. And then I just really, before we leave here, I'd like you guys to consider this, okay? You get what you pay for.
Yeah. Don't sacrifice quality for convenience or price.
Yeah. So how good can that food be for your body that you're only spending $1 for? Now, disclaimer here. We absolutely understand struggling financial situations, not having the money for the top-notch food. We absolutely understand that. But there are different choices and options that can be made beyond going to drive-thrus. And even at those drive-thrus, there's different choices that you can make now. There's a lot more options and opportunities to choose good foods, even if you have to buy them quickly. But preparing your own food, even doing weekly planning and prepping it so that you have it ready when you need to go. These are all great ways that you can put Nutrigenomics to work for you.
And another tip, especially on fresh produce, go to the grocery stores that are around your house and talk to the person who's the produce manager, because produce does expire.
Yeah.
If you could, and they have to throw it away, they would much rather sell it to you at a discount, knowing it's about to be perishable, or it might be the head of lettuce might be a little bit wilted, or the collard greens are a little bit wilted. It doesn't matter if you go home and cook it that night, and you can get steals on bargains. So if you go into your grocery store, talk to the produce manager and say, hey, what would be the best time? Tell them, be honest, good nutrition, I'm on a budget. Is there any way I could work with you to take some of your about to expire or expired vegetables that are still relatively good off your hands at a discounted price? They would love to do that.
Yeah.
So do that. It's a good tip.
Well, and on top of that as well is that there are food banks, there are churches that have really stepped up in this massive time of need, and they're offering great resources for you, some of them on weekly basis. I know that there's a place in Buckeye, Arizona, where I've been to help serve there, to where they've got some amazing food that comes in that's fresh and some that's not so fresh. But then also churches that provide food pantries for people that are in need. You don't have to be a member of their church. So a lot of the times it's just a matter of, maybe being a little bit more humble and just knowing that people want to help you. So go out and look for those good foods that you can get that can also be free for you. So if you're in the Arizona area, please reach out to us, because we'd love to be able to connect you to the food banks that we know about personally that are here and available for you. But always go to dondiandmarcy.com, give us your episode ideas, find out what our nutrigenomic biohacking regimen looks like on a daily basis, and any other questions, including if you're here locally, what the name of our church is and the different areas that we know of where you can get fresh food and even food in general, because we know there's a lot of people hurting right now, and there's a lot of people out there that want to help. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So guys, thanks so much for joining us today on this episode number 27, all about nutrigenomics and how, plants and plant compounds can help positively affect your optimal wellness. So thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, guys.